Well, good evening, everybody. The town hall clock is striking, so off we go. Welcome to this evening's overview and scrutiny board. We have a number of apologies for absence and substitutions today, so I'm going to hand over to my manager here for her to go through those.
Thank you, Chair. We have received a number of apologies. We received apologies from Councillor Latif, with Councillor Zahor sobbing for him. We have received apologies also from Councillor Raja. There's no sob. Councillor Y. Begum, with Councillor R. Malik sobbing for her. Councillor Nigel Marshall, with Councillor A. Malik sobbing for him. And Councillor M. Hussein, with Councillor David Taylor sobbing for him. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good idea, David. Thank you very much. No, that's fine. Thank you. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. Do we have any exempt items tonight?
No exempt, Chair.
No, thank you. A recording of the meeting will be available on the council's website, all being well, within 24 hours of the meeting. Would members and officers and the chair remember to switch their microphones on when they're speaking, and speak directly into the microphone, and switch the microphones off when they're finished. Do we have any officers joining by Teams?
Yes, we have a number of officers.
Okay. Officers joining by Teams, please use the hands up icon on your screen for questions and comments. Please turn your camera and microphone on when speaking and off when finished. Finally, the usual one, can we please make sure that mobile phones are switched off or placed on into silent mode? I finished with that one then? Yes. Okay. Let me just first of all give you a quick update on some of the things that have happened. We had a number of items that have gone from OSB into executive. We had a referral from OSB into the Net Zero Roadmap Progress Report. The additional retrofit homes that we asked for was not supported because the argument from executive was that they'd already done one and it was sufficient for purpose. I fought the case because I believed that we needed to do something which was more appealing to ordinary residents rather than council properties, but that was the way it was. The second one that was referred was dealing with neighbourhood services, private sector housing, civil penalty policies, and so on. The recommendation that any surplus funds should be dedicated to further enforcement of the regulations was supported by executive. And you'll be able to see that on the website, and the notes that you'll get after this meeting will give you the reference. The Food Safety, Food Standards and Feed Law Service Plan was, again, that was referred to executive on the 7th of April. The recommendation to invest further resourcing for food and safety team was noted. However, the need for better communication of what the implications are of the health policy and the health inspections was supported. Right.
Question again for the extra staff?
They only noted the request. There was no agreement to provide extra staff, even though we'd asked for it. But the extra communication was agreed. Right. Are there any disclosures of interest, please? Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I've been instructed that I should first take the minutes. We have the minutes before you from the last meeting. Can I take it that those minutes are acceptable to the committee? In which case, then that's it. Now, disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest?
No, Chair.
Yeah, Chair. And like always, I just want to declare that I'm a landlord, although, within the actual update in performance, there's housing in there. So there's no, a pecuniary interest at all. So just want to flag that up.
I think, as before, we don't have any issue with that. Other disclosures of interest? No? Okay. Any urgent business?
No, there is urgent business, Chair. We do have that report on the accountability report statement.
The one which we have listed as item 5. It was entered late, but we need to consider it tonight because of the funding implications. So, but I will take it as item 5 rather than taking it now as urgent business. Okay, so. Sorry?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's all.
So, if you go through then now to item 5, the item 5 is the accountability statement for the Department for Education. Who do we have presenting that tonight? Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Muriel James. I'm the Adult Skills Delivery Manager. The accountability statement is something that has been introduced by the Department for Education in lieu of the normal contract with the DfE for our yearly funding for adult education. And it's a statement of what we are going to do with the funding across the next academic year.
We're open to, you're open to questions, or you're going to say anything more?
No, I'm open to questions, Councillor.
Okay. Who would like to start us off on any questions for this report?
Hi, Marielle. Hi, Debbie. Yeah, this is a statement which obviously you submit every year, and there have no problem in supporting that. Reading at the report, you seems to be achieving your targets. However, with what's going on nationally, it's predicted that so there's a lot of pressure on businesses. We are seeing closures. There's more people going to be made redundant, and the traditional jobs may disappear. So we've got to sort of widen our horizon a little bit and trying to support people into employment. Just wanted to sort of know what your thoughts and plans are for the future, particularly looking at the AI. And secondly, like I always do and ask, and you have, provided some data in the past, but I want to see that golden thread coming through right down to the grassroots where the challenges are, where the deprivation is, where you are looking to support those adults to improve their skills. We know that our employment rates are high and the qualification levels are not as great. So we've had those discussions in the past. Just wanted you to sort of give us an update where we are at the moment and how you're linking in with the neighbourhood centres and so forth.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. So we are something that's not in the statement, which has actually happened since the accountability statement was written, is that we have managed to receive some funding to train 20 of our teachers in AI. So we will be able to link that into the other IT offer that we have, and that will open up other career pathways for people. So we will do the basic AI. They will look at the types of careers that are available to them, and just look very basically at how to use AI and how to code for it. And then we'll pass them on to other training providers such as Barnfield, etc., for further training. But that will open up career pathways for people. And within the accountability framework, we've already written about how we are going to work with the Careers Hub Luton. And we're going to use some of their IAG advisors, so information, advice and guidance. And they are going to widen our information, advice and guidance offer so that people have the opportunity to see more careers advisors. So at the moment, they just get a one-to-one meeting with a careers advisor if they book that up. But the careers advisors are going to come in, they're going to hold events, they're going to do classroom visits, and they're going to do marketing events, so that people really understand what support they can get from the National Careers Service. And then obviously the jobs that are on the rise, such as IT, healthcare, etc., they will be advertising those sorts of jobs to people and explaining what types of qualifications they need to do in order to get onto those career pathways.
Very much for that, and just an update of how we trying to reach out to for those people who need the support the most. And there was another thing which I raised previously, and perhaps you might be able to comment on it if there's an improvement. With what's going around in terms of planning, some if we look at regeneration and so forth, the number of projects that we have, and then when we look at the number of apprenticeships. I know that those targets were from the past. Have we been able to engage any more employers, or have we reviewed those targets for apprenticeships? And I know that the Employment and Skills Board, we had set that up. Have we seen any increase of more employers coming to the table or not? Is that so? Two prompt questions. Have we reviewed our target? Is that something we're going to do or not? And have we seen increase in engagement with the more employers?
I hope you don't mind me jumping in here, Councillor Khan. So for those that don't know me, I am Debbie Paul Hunt and I'm the Head of Employability and Skills at the Council. And so the points that you've raised, Councillor Khan, absolutely valid points, and thank you very much for those. So in terms of the questions that you were asking, we have absolutely made sure that we have increased that employer engagement. So through the Employment and Skills Partnership Board, we've completely changed the focus of that now so that it is employer-led. And leading back into the point you made about AI, so we have a standing agenda item called Horizon Scanning, and that is looking at those skills that will be coming up in the future. And there has been a massive focus on AI. As a result of that, one of the projects that we are involved with the University of Bedfordshire is a project supporting our SMEs to use AI within their businesses and their organisations. So it is an upskilling to bring some of those skills in. So by having more employers around the table gives us more access to show good practice from elsewhere. So how people are recruiting, for example, using AI. We can then take that back from an adult learning perspective and say, these are the things that we need to do. In terms of that business engagement, so we are just about to launch the public consultation of the new economic growth strategy for Luton, and therefore we will be doing a skills reset. So of the employment skills strategy that we've got from 22 to 27, we will be making sure that what we are doing in those skills pathways aligns to where Luton is going in the future, with the fantastic news of the DCO. And, you know, that will be creating 11,000 new jobs, with the news about Universal. And they've already said that they will need to tap in to the Luton labour market. It's absolutely about making sure that we're making those connections and making those opportunities available to all of our residents who want employment. In terms of working with some of our anchors, so with the anchors framework, we're having lots of conversations. So TUI and the Luton and Bedfordshire Hospital Trust are two examples where we've talked to them in detail about ring fencing their unspent apprenticeship levy so that it can support SMEs and micro businesses in Luton. So both of those major organisations, so unspent levy, for anybody that doesn't know, after 2 years it goes back to HMRC and leaves Luton and won't likely come back. So utilising that, we are leading by example as a council, and we've increased our transfer to SMEs by over 200% in the last 12 months. So we also held at the end of February Luton's first apprenticeship awards, where we had 87 nominations and there were 11 awards, lots of employers who came to the event. There are some amazing things that are going on, so really showcasing what we are doing across Luton. So that was a really long-winded way, Councillor Khan, of me saying apprenticeship numbers are increasing. Engagement with businesses is increasing. That joined up conversation about what they need from their workforce is absolutely happening. And that is something that I'm personally and my team are leading on. So just to reassure you.
And lastly, I know that you had planned this about a year ago. It was engaging other providers within the community. So when I was trying to talk about neighborhood centers and reaching out to those people, when is that exercise going to happen in terms of getting more providers on board when we talk about ESOL and other sort of basic language courses and so forth? Have you got any finalized dates, or have you engaged with any, or what is the plan?
We've already engaged and we've had several meetings already. It's called the Skills Provider Forum, and we've got about 30 different organisations that are on there at the moment. Any funding opportunity that is available, whether that is through the council or other funding streams that are available, we let people know about. So one of the items we'll be coming on to later is about Connect to Work, and there is an opportunity again there. So we've let everybody know the steps that they need to go through. So with procurement, the new Procurement Act, how you get onto the portal, how we go about doing those things, because engaging with some of those communities where they've already got those established relationships is really important to us. So the Skills Provider Forum is up and running and holds I think it's quarterly meetings, and we send out communication in between. So that is already underway, Councillor Khan.
Councillor Stevens.
I wanted to just draw the attention to page 26, ensuring that residents take advantage of their level 2 and 3 entitlement.
More towards the microphone.
Sorry?
Difficult to hear.
Can you not hear? Can you hear me? These seats are very uncomfortable. We have to get anywhere to go forward. Yeah, sorry. Ensuring that residents take advantage of their level 2 and 3 entitlement. How well have we been doing up until now? There's no figures that show how well we've been actually doing in that area. That's the first thing I wanted to ask. And if we get people and large numbers of people up to that level, do we have any idea of the kind of job vacancies? We haven't any information here on job vacancies, for example, of the kind of jobs that we're going to get people into. It's all very well getting people up to the right level, and getting people up to level 4 and above is great. But where are the jobs that our people are going to go into when they? As a guy that spent 27 years at University of Bedfordshire at high level, in education is the key facet of the area that I have an interest in. So perhaps you can give a little feedback on the job idea, on the job vacancy situation, and also on how we are doing, because obviously level 2 and 3 is the basic level that we need to bring the majority of our population up to.
Thank you, Councillor. So I haven't got those statistics to hand at the moment, and it's not something that the Department for Education asked for in this report that we send to them, but it's certainly something that we can put together as an addendum for you. But I can get those figures and send them through to Eunice to distribute to OSB for me. You want to come in on this?
I'd be happy with that, Chair. Please. My second point is with regard to 9.8% of the working population in Luton have no qualifications, and we're 3% higher than national average. Who are included in that? I know that I'm wondering whether asylum seekers, although they're at working age, but not necessarily allowed to work, are they included in these figures?
No,
they're not. And what percentage of that are fairly newcomers to Luton, say over the last 5 years, if we break that percentage down?
That we get those figures from our business intelligence team, so I could ask for that.
It would be quite useful to know the extent of the problem, how we're going to try and deal with that, because that is a key area for ESL. That's something we need to know, whether even with your projections and plans going forward, whether we've got enough staff that's going to be, if that is a trend that's continuing.
Yeah, we can find that out and send that through to Eunice as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. I was going to say thank you for the accountability statement. I was just wondering, it's not due until the 30th of June, so we have a bit of time. Will you be revising it in light of recent developments, such as securing the DCO, and today the announcement by the Labour government that Universal Studios, which will create 28,000 jobs just up the road from us, will you be revising this in line with that? Because I think it needs that revision. So if you can answer that one first, then I'll ask you my second question.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we will be revising it in line with recent developments.
And then I saw one of your local challenges there is about economic inactivity, particularly among ethnic minorities or global majority and females. I couldn't see in there what you're actually doing to tackle that, because obviously if we want to get people out of poverty, we need to get some of those economically inactive out there working, and some of them may not even be at level 2. And I don't know, what are you doing about people maybe getting qualifications that are below level 2, functional skills and stuff like that. So I'd welcome, what are you doing around trying to get ethnic minority females into work, upskilling them? I wasn't quite clear. I couldn't find out what are you doing specifically around that.
Yes, we are working on that. We actually offer ESOL courses, English for Speakers of Other Languages, and that's one of our key offers, because there are so many English for Speakers of Other Languages needs within Luton, and that for a lot of people is the first step towards their level 2 entitlement. So we do a whole range of programmes around ESOL. We have non-accredited programmes to kind of get people ready to take that step, and then we have from entry level 1 up to level 2. So we have a broad spectrum of ESOL courses, and we do have a lot of economically inactive ladies from global majority backgrounds on those courses, who we then try and progress on to other level 2 courses when they're ready. But we can get you the figures. Again, I can send them through to Eunice. We can get you the figures of how many we had in the last academic year.
I think that would be good to get those figures. Also, I'm not sure, are we doing that as outreach, i.e. where they live in community centres, and rather than asking them to come into, I think, where you're based now, Morton House?
We do a mixture, councillor. So some of our delivery is based at Arndale House on top of Luton Point. And we specifically were put there by the council so that we were central to wherever you lived in the town. It was one bus journey away. So we do our ESOL provision there. So at Morton House, we do a lot of employability delivery. So we do passport to employment, English, maths and IT and apprenticeships. And in Arndale House, we do our ESOL provision, but we do also go out into the community, and we do quite a lot of it in the schools, so that it's easy, because a lot of the people that we're targeting are parents. And so it's much easier for them if they can drop their children at school and then stay where they are to study. And then they're there, obviously, then to pick the children up again. So we do quite a lot of that, and it is targeted. And the family workers in the school know which parents to target to encourage them to come.
Thank you for that, and it's reassuring. It would be good to get information about what you're actually doing and whether we can go and do anything further, and what other barriers that might be to stop participation in those courses. Thank you.
If I can just take a chair's privilege for a moment. You mentioned the fact that you're working in Arndale House. I've seen that Newton Borough Council is moving out of Arndale House. So I would suggest that you actually bear that in mind, and I don't know how that's going to be dealt with. The next thing is that I understand that what you've done in the report is in order to satisfy the Department for Education. You'll gather by some of the questions that the councillors look a bit further than seems to be needed for the DFE. For example, I don't really see a clear connection in the report we have of the 2040 objectives and the getting people into employment. They don't seem to link together to me. I also note that we still are looking at a relatively low level of qualifications with the GCSEs. I consider that to be low in these terms. My final thing is that I hope that with the AI, as somebody from an IT background, I hope that we're making sure that people realise the limitations that exist today on a lot of the AI solutions, because they do not come back necessarily with and automatically with things that help. But I do realise that the report is primarily for the DFE and not for us.
Yeah, if I may just come back in very briefly. Thank you. They're really helpful comments. In terms of Arndale House, just to clarify, Luton Borough Council are coming out of floor 3, but floor 2, which is where adult learning provision is staying for the moment. So we are staying in situ in Arndale House, but in the next 5 years, maybe we'll move into the stage, for example.
I'm very grateful for that, because the report that I saw just simply said that Luton Borough Council was moving out of Arndale House, as well as the NHS moving out.
Yes, so staff from my directorate who are on currently the 3rd floor are moving onto our floor so we can work more collaboratively. So we will be staying.
Great, thank you. More questions? Yes, John.
Chair, just coming back to your point about GCSEs, would I be right in thinking level 2 is functional skills? Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Fry, level 2 is functional skills or GCSE.
Thank you. So we do have some sort of GCSE by the looks of it on there. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, just to further follow on from Councillor Fry, level 2 is GCSE and level 3 is A level. So these are pretty aspirational targets, in as much as they are trying to equip people for the workplace. Because I think members need to bear in mind is that how long does somebody want to be in the classroom, and how long, and how quickly can we get them into a place of work? So although we all have aspirations in terms of copious amounts of study and accreditations, I think it's about getting people ready fit for the place of work. And as Councillor Abbas has just said, we've had some amazing announcements about developments in the borough, in the county, and I think we need initiatives like this to go ahead and get people ready for the place of work and not sitting in a classroom. Thank you, Chair.
Just picking up on that to make sure that I understand, Councillor Cunliffe, on page 31, strategic priority 2 says increase in the proportion of residents with 5+ GCSEs. That was where I picked up the fact that I thought that was a somewhat low ambition. That was all. If it satisfies us for this purposes of this report, that's fine. But that would seem relatively low.
I think it does on the appearance, but as somebody who works in a school at the moment and with A levels, a lot of A level providers want 5 GCSEs, so that's the current requirement. So that can only be the target that they go with, because if young people that want to go into A levels, they need a minimum of 5 GCSEs to get onto those A level courses and those courses at FE College. So I think this, again, like others have said, ties in what the DFE wants. So it's about getting those people the 5 GCSEs or plus, and then moving them on and transitioning them on to, their career pathways.
Thank you. That's helped me.
Just a couple of comments. First thing is that we need to obviously focus in Luton, and just for correction and clarity, the universal studios were announced a year and a half ago. So, and those jobs could be different nature. We've got a strategy in place to empower people based on the skill set they need for the local jobs. That is the purpose of 2040. So based on that, when we look at adult learning, is all about adults having the right skills. So we're looking at improving their CV writing, improving their IT skills, language, and also, so we got to try and understand what the job of these two lovely ladies are, not to sort of confuse matters. So thank you.
Any more? No. I have to say that it was good to see the report. Obviously, as far as I'm concerned, I think that as long as we can get this through so that we don't have any interruption, then that's clearly a good thing. Do I have any objections, or can we just thank the officers for the report and move on?
We'll be able to have the addendums that you referred to.
I am actually on annual leave next week, so if I can,
No, wasn't
if I can have 2 weeks, I can get it to you within 2 weeks.
Generally speaking.
Appreciate that. We're obviously getting the reply that we asked for as well as a follow-up. So thank you very much for that. So my next item then.
Your next item. No. References.
Okay, the next item then is, do we have any references from committees and other bodies?
Chair, no references.
Item 7, which is the corporate performance report, pages 18 to 98 on your papers. Who have we got? That's Aurora. Can you hear?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Shall I share my screen and begin presenting?
Yes, please.
Just bear with me one moment. So performance for Q3 has overall been quite positive. 44 measures are showing as green, 4 are amber and 16 are red. Beginning with the reds, the percentage of influenceable council spend through procurement with local suppliers, figure of 41%, is lower than the target. In comparison to Q2, there is a drop of 3.3% in grow local spend. However, there is only a drop of 1.1 million in aggregate spend during the two periods. The drop could be attributed to increased spend in high value contracts or suppliers who are outside the 20-mile radius of the town hall. The year-to-date grow local spend reflects an upward growth compared to the last 3 financial years. Employment in Luton, number of jobs, labour force survey, including self-employed, has not met the 1% increase target. Through the service's new economic growth strategy and the development sites coming forward, including Power Court, Prologis and the airport and junction, should see this number increase. All these jobs should pay well above the real living wage. The number of affordable homes started on site year-to-date figure is 0, which is below both the quarterly and annual targets. The number and percentage of homelessness acceptances is higher than the target, which indicates poor performance. The figures show that a large proportion of cases end up as accepted for a full housing duty. This ties up with the large number of the approaches of households that come in at the relief stage where the service are unable to relieve their homelessness within 56 days. Town centre vibrancy, town centre footfall for Q1 is 1.75 and is below the target. The contract with the current footfall supplier has ended, hence there are no Q2 or Q3 figures available. Services are currently looking for a new data supplier. A significant amount of work is happening across the town centre to increase footfall, including a new town centre task force to tackle the short-term knotty issues, more police and net officer presence. A public realm programme is underway, including more public lighting, greening and public art. In addition, there is a vibrant event programme with lots of events happening on a weekly basis. All this is supported by a strong communications and marketing plan. Percentage of education, health and care plans issued within 20 weeks, excluding exceptions, figure is 13.2%, which is below the target, but it is an improvement over the previous quarter, which was 6.3%. A number of factors contribute to current performance, including high caseloads. The average is 426 cases per officer, and the unavailability of statutory advice required to develop high-quality EHCPs that integrate services effectively. In order to improve performance, there has been particular focus in enhancing collaboration with social care services, supporting them in understanding their statutory responsibilities, and to help improve the timeliness and quality of the advice provided. The SEND assessment team are closely monitoring all statutory advice through the multi-agency audit process to ensure ongoing improvements. The number of homeless households allocated a permanent offer through the housing register Q3 figure of 34 and year-to-date figure of 138 are below target. This shortage has been somewhat offset in Q2 by the completion of a Hightown Housing Association scheme at Oakley Road, 65 units of which 56 were family-sized homes. There are no other significant new build completions or acquisitions expected within the current financial year. Antisocial behaviour cases relative to the size of the landlord Q3 figure of 18.4 is above the quarterly target of 14.4, and it is likely that the yearly target will be exceeded, which is negative. The unemployment rate remains at 6.6%, which has not met the target. A series of programmes are underway to remedy this, including community job fairs across the town, working with key employers across Luton, A new economic growth strategy and an update to the skills strategy will be published in 2025, which will see further work with education providers and employers to have the right pathways and pipeline opportunities available. Morton House opens in early 2025 and will enable the service to deliver more passport to employment programs. The DWP have just announced a new program called Connect to Work, which will be launched in 2025. On to the positive measures. The number of London Luton Airport passengers, Q3 and Q4 figures will always be slightly lower than the beginning of the reporting year due to seasonal trends. However, the year-to-date figure of 13.35 is well on track to meet the annual target. Adult social care financial assessments, both debt recovery and timeline to process charges, are within their respective targets. The number of homeless relief year-to-date figure has exceeded the annual target. This quarter, the service are up by 30% from the previous quarter for relief outcomes. This is in balance with the increased number of relief duties owed within the same quarter. Employees and senior employees of an ethnic minority background as a percentage of our workforce, aiming to reflect our community's year-end figures, have both reached target levels. Numbers supported or amount awarded with discretionary housing payments are within target levels. DWP allocate each local authority a set amount each year. Luton always spends their allocation, especially in these current times. There is an option for local authorities to top up the fund by 2.5 times the government allocation, but this has to come out of their own budget. The council tax billing percentage of work outstanding over 20 days. Year-to-date figure is 15%, which is on target. Statutory compliance completed for both housing and corporate are well within target. The percentage of children attending good and outstanding primary, secondary and special schools are all on target, as well as the percentage of children looked after attending good and outstanding schools. In Q3, 1 secondary phase and 5 primary phase schools had inspection reports published. Overall judgments are no longer given. Out of the 6 schools, 3 maintained their standards since their last inspection. 2 may have improved significantly since their last inspection, and 1 received a graded inspection resulting in good across all 4 judgment areas. The percentage of attendance in state-funded primary and secondary schools are both on target, with 94.8% for primary and 92.8% for secondary. Q3 represents the same period in the academic year as Q2, as it falls within the spring term, therefore the data for this term mirrors Q2. Total business rates due and total business rates collected is within target. Quarterly figures for total business rates have been increasing as the year progresses, which is to be expected and means that it is likely that year-end figures will be similar to the year-end figures of the previous reporting period. The amount of council tax collected of 82.5% is on target. Timeliness of council tax reduction, new claims and changes, year-to-date figures are all within target levels. Amount awarded with the household support grant is on target. A substantial sum has been disbursed over the past 3 months. In addition to providing help to families eligible for FSM, the fund has been used to target pensioners on low incomes but not eligible for pension credits and therefore missing out on winter fuel allowance. Percentage of hospital discharges within timescale, social care assessments completed within 42 days figure of 89% is above the target, which is 85%. The steadily improving figures have been achieved through structured support and more streamlined management of staff. Number of children looked after of 351 is within the target of 365. There's been a downward trend for children looked after, 420 March 2023, 375 at March 2024, to 351 children as at December 2024. Similarly, the service have seen a reduction in separated migrant children, with 38 as at the end of December 2024. This is below our allocated quota of 58 children. Number of apprenticeship starts, 45 year to date, is on target. The quarterly increase in figures demonstrate that the service's new ways of working, having a dedicated apprenticeships manager, new apprenticeship policy, etc., and so on, is having a positive impact. Timeliness of benefits, new claims and changes are both on target. The number of newly approved foster carers, year-to-date figure of 12 is on target of 20. Luton has recruited 4 newly approved foster carers since April 2024 to date. 3 are temporarily approved 24 foster carers, and a further one is general. The service target is set at 20 and compares low to 14 newly approved foster carers during 23-24. The unemployment claimant count 7.3% has met the 0.25% decrease quarterly target. The number of affordable homes completed year-to-date figure of 71 is on target. Hightown completed 65 homes at Oakley House in June and August. 2 sites for 52 council homes are still on site. The service recently achieved planning permission for 2 other sites, and Right by Receipts funding has been identified for these additional projects, meaning the service can progress development rather than waiting for Homes England funding. These will start on site in 2025 and be completed in 2026-27 for 11 homes. The stage has been approved and will provide 84 council homes in 2026. There are also 2 additional housing association schemes in the pipeline, plus 3 affordable homes at the Foxhall scheme at the Parrot, which is due on site soon. The number of children subject of a child protection plan, 189, is on target. The challenge identified is the percentage of children becoming subject to a plan which has been subject to a child protection plan before. End of quarter 2, September 2024, was at 15.2%, whereas this has increased to 22.1% in quarter 3. Whilst this is still lower than the statistical neighbours and England, the service will continue to monitor this closely. Complaints relative to the size of the landlord, stage 1 and 2, year-to-date figures are on target. The regulator of social housing has introduced tenant satisfaction measures that will be collected on an annual basis across all social landlords. One of these is the number of complaints received per 1,000 properties managed. The regulator will use this and the other TSMs to make comparisons across all social landlords and intends to publish them each year. Greater awareness of how and when to log complaints amongst front-facing staff in line with the training provided by the Housing Ombudsman has resulted in increased numbers of complaints being logged on caseworker, potentially skewing the comparative data. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I submitted, just so that the board knows, I personally submitted a series of questions and had written replies. Have they gone out to all members,
Yes.
Eunice? Yes. So you should all have seen those. I will come in a moment to Councillor Stevens because I know he also raised some questions, but Councillor Zahor?
Thank you, Chair. Are there any indicators that consistently underperform, and what targeted actions are being taken to address them?
Are we still online?
So the percentage of EHCPs measure is an example of one that has been performing low for some time, but the commentary is quite extensive in discussing different ways in which services are seeking to improve this. I don't know if someone from Children's is here and can explain it a bit better than I can.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, just a follow up, another one.
We get the officer come in.
Thank you very much. Yes, the EHCP plans have, in terms of compliance within the 20 weeks, has gradually reduced over time. And I think that's very clearly linked with the capacity issues and the increasing demand coming through. There is a national shortage of educational psychologists for various reasons. Our payment mechanism and our banding has not met the local and regional benchmarks, so it's been difficult to recruit. This has been something we've been going through with council over this last year, and we were very successful in going to Admin and Regulation Committee to increase the benchmarks and the threshold. So we're now recruiting. We've also commissioned the completion of 100 EHCPs, which are a backlog, so we can get back on track. And there's a whole programme of intervention taking place, and that's due to come to CSRG later this month with a clear plan so that people are informed about what action is taking place. And I think you will see from the data, it's beginning to turn around, but because of the timeline and also the significant increase in demand for assessments, that's going to take a little bit longer for it to actually get back to where it was.
Could you provide more details on which services have seen the most improvement due to new ways of working and recruitment?
Who's picking?
Granted to the officer presenting the report.
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Could you please provide more details on which services have seen the most improvement due to new ways of working and recruitment?
Well, there's been an overall improvement across services. Are there any areas in particular you're interested in?
It's all in the report. I just wanted the more details if there is any.
Okay. Councillor Neef?
Yeah. Oh, I think a point of order, more than anything, if members have submitted questions and they've had written responses, I don't think that needs to be brought to committee and then going through them, because you've asked a question, you've had a response, it's been shared. So I think we should just move on, because that's in the standing orders. So, like, there are some members in here, they get a written response and they go through each and every question. So I think we're better to make prudent, to use good, be efficient with our time and not going through the responses you receive. You received them, so let's just move on.
That is exactly what I've done. I asked my questions, I got the answers, and they have been circulated. That was exactly in order to try and save us and become more efficient here. However, there are some additional questions which I know have not been put in very precise question terms, but in terms of topics by Councillor Stevens. So therefore, he couldn't have got an answer because they were topic areas in order to make sure that officers were present. So they weren't specific questions. So I will give him the opportunity to ask some basic questions.
Yeah, supplementary chair. I get that, but we have a situation where then the meeting is then taken over by what Councillor Stevens is asking and what he's getting and what he's not getting. So I know I'm just trying to save us some time, Councillor. That's what I'm trying to do. So again, I think we should have some, efficiency in our meetings, because it shouldn't be a case of what Councillor Stevens has asked, why he hasn't got what he wants. It should be about what the OSB wants as a committee, not just one member. So I think we should just stick to what's been in the
Councillor,
report.
I believe that is exactly what we're doing. I'm going to go to Councillor Khan first and then go to Councillor Stevens.
No, thank you very much. And while we're on HCPs, yeah, I do understand it's been a challenge for a very long time. If we claim to be a council which gets more money back than Westminster, then we do have money. It needs to be reallocated and spent where it's needed, and particularly when it comes to assessing children with special needs. Now, that means that not only these children are not getting the appropriate support timely, but at the same time it's costing the council a lot of money. So my challenge, Paul, is that have we looked at providing this service slightly differently? Because I understand that Bedford seems to be doing a lot better than us, but yet, you know, for well over 5-6 years since I've known, we've been playing catch up. I know there's a national shortage, but some councils have done something better. So is there an opportunity to share services with either Bedford or elsewhere? And I've got a few other questions on other stuff, but so I'll let Paul answer this and then I'll come back on the others. Thank you.
Certainly we work together as 3 local authorities, Central Bedfordshire, Luton and Bedford Borough. We're involved in the National Send Change programme. And so we share good ideas, we share sort of resources where we can. Educational psychologists, people are loath to share because they desperately need them themselves. But what we are doing is looking at different ways we can address this. So we've been appointing assistant EPs, additional educational psychologist assistants, to help with the early intervention. We've also working with Cambridge Community Health around autism and neurodevelopmental issues to try and get early intervention. So we're not actually waiting for an assessment to come through. And there's also, as part of our plan, we are funding schools for their EHCP from the 20th week when it should have been delivered. So if it's late, schools are still getting the funding to meet that child's needs until that the EHCP is completed. So what we're doing is learning a lot from each other. The sharing of educational psychology resources is very, very difficult because there is a national shortage. Bedford Borough have some, but they're inundated with requests themselves. But we actually work on looking at different ways of managing our caseloads. And I think Bedford Borough have had a recent inspection in terms of the local area review. We haven't had ours yet. And so therefore, there are many things that Bedford Borough are doing which have been celebrated. But similarly, we know that there's a lot of work that's happening in Luton that is also being celebrated and is the envy of other local authorities. It's very much about how we work on this together, but it's the sharing of ideas rather than the resources, which is the key thing, really.
For that, Paul. So other questions that I have is around unemployment. What I want to know is that with the recent closure that we've seen from Atlantis, are those figures included in the unemployment figures that you have? And if not, when we will get the accurate data? And the second thing around that is about intelligence, basically, and ready for being prepared for readiness. What's happening globally? We know that's going to have an impact locally. Economy is not in a good shape. Inflation is going up. We know the interest rates are predicted to go up. Hang on a minute. I've read my stuff. You don't need to interject when I'm talking, okay? So that this will inevitably have an impact here. So in terms of readiness, in terms of budget preparation, what pressures do we see on housing? Because clearly with the benefits cost, that's going to have an impact. Secondly, when we have high unemployment rates, that means it's going to have a pressure on adult social care. Again, it means allocating resources. So have you projected that in your report? And secondly, when we look at the RAG rating, although we see green, amber, and blue, and it shows that some targets are met, some are not, but it doesn't compare to region and national. We want to know how good it is and what more improvements it would need. It may be green, okay, for meeting targets, but it might be well away from where we need to be. So can we capture that next time so we know we get an accurate assessment? So thank you.
Do we have a response for the council? John. No?
Can I come in there? Is that okay? I'm
Yeah.
not sure you can see me okay. Apologies, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me. It was just to note, sorry, I'm Katie Bodycoat and I'm the head of BI. So Aurora works in my team. And I just wanted to note that we're currently reviewing the corporate report and the content of the corporate report. So if we're wanting to include some extra measures, including the benchmark, that's something that we can consider for future reports.
Unemployment question which I asked, are the figures inclusive of and how recent are they, and does that include the people that are being laid off?
Yeah, Boxford only closed last Friday, and I think it's in the chair. Just
Chair, may I just interject very briefly? I know Katie's speaking as well, but the actual quarter, this report is Q3, so I think it's well behind the curve in terms of including those figures, Aslam. So I think the Q4 reports will just about capture that, I expect, but even those I think will be the tail end of it. So as Katie says, we're doing a lot of work in the background around sharpening up the reports and the measures. And we've discussed that a few times in different forums, part of 2040 and part of the corporate reporting as well. So I think we can take away your comments if no one's here from economic development to be able to respond to those in future. But I don't think we'll be able to give you an absolutely accurate response unless I see anyone willing to take that in the here and now. So I think we'd probably be best off taking that off and coming back to you with it, to be honest. But this is a Q3 report, so a good 3 months back, because we have to work obviously in advance. Thank you.
I personally found the report much easier to go through than the previous one, so I was happy to see. Yes, the policy.
Thank you. If I can perhaps touch on unemployment, I completely understand where Councillor Khan's coming from. I appreciate that. Obviously, what happens globally does have a knock-on effect, local communities. I understand and I appreciate that. And it's about what measures we put in place to ensure that if there is a knock-on effect, how resilient our communities are and the support we can give to those who are the most vulnerable. So that is something that we are actively looking at. And what is happening globally, we are looking at how it will impact us locally, because you can't take things in isolation. That's what my grandmother, God rest her soul, used to say. With regards to the unemployment figures, I don't believe that they are inclusive of the Stellantis situation, but they will be for the next quarter. But as is the case that this is something that myself and Gerard, who obviously we are working completely closely with the intelligence reporting team on to ensure that there is live data available, because as you know, things change, and obviously the data in a report becomes redundant, as it were, as soon as the report is written. So it's about data capture, and so hopefully that information should be in the next report. But obviously, it has, what happened at Stellantis with the Vauxhall plant closing down has had a big knock-on effect, because as you know, it was a very sad day. A lot of families and also for workers as well, some of them who have been made redundant. So we are taking measures to ensure that we provide them with as much support as possible to find alternative employment. That includes part-time employment and the other additional support that they need in terms of well-being, CV preparation, how to find an alternative form of income, that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's something that we can by all means touch on when we present the plan as well. But like I said, in terms of data, because I know councillors are keen on data, is that hopefully that information will be available for the next quarter. So that was my long-winded contribution, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. Thank you very much. That was really helpful, and I'm really pleased the portfolio holder is here. And not often we get many portfolio holders come in and supporting the office. So thank you,
Councillor Stevens. Can you try and keep yourself to questions?
Chair, one of the questions I was going to be around apprenticeships, but I'll move that onto the next item of the agenda because it comes up again there. So try to be helpful in that respect. One of the things I wanted to pick up on the town centre vibrancy, this seems to be the third report that's come through where we're still looking for a new data supplier. What is the problem in finding a data supplier? Because until we know the accurate figures, there's not a lot that we can do necessarily to see the level of the problem. For the nighttime footfall, Well, we know that there's a consultation is taking place at the moment, and I think there's been 600 responses so far, which is quite good, you know, in the early stages of this. But it's important to find out more about why people are not coming into the town centre, and that data, the data, which is missing again, would be helpful. Certainly when I talk to many people in my ward, especially the elderly, they are, excuse me, Chair, especially the elderly, they are reluctant to come into the town because of safety. Yet it says here there's an increased presence of enforcement and also policing. Yet at any point during the day, you can walk through to George Street and you'll find people out begging. You'll find problem with mopeds speeding through. So we need to pick up some of these issues, and they will come out from the data.
Can we come back to what I think was the start of the question, which is, do we have any idea when we're going to get a new data provider to give us information about the footfall in the town?
Sorry, if I may jump in. If no one from Inclusive Economy is there to answer this question, I will take that back to the service and get you a
Just as a reminder, this is the third report.
Yes, if you can, please, because that has come up on several OSB meetings. Yes, Councillor Stevens, question, please.
My next question is shocking to see on page 55 the level of childhood obesity. And I'm trying to understand what measures are being undertaken. There's no mention in here about sport in schools and other sporting activities which would be a contributory factor. There's not a lot in here about the type of foods and things. What actions are we going to take? I mean, we cannot have a level of prevalence of for in year 6 of almost approaching 50% of our young people.
Yep, I can pick this up. Hello there. Hi. My name's Elizabeth Elliott. I'm the Joint Acting Director of Public Health, and I can answer this question. So thank you for raising that, Councillor. We are absolutely committed to reducing the rate of childhood obesity. What we see and what we are continuing to see is some of the impact from COVID. So we absolutely saw an increase, and we have over the last 2 years have actually seen the rates of plateaued. So we're not seeing that increase that we were seeing. So for that perspective, we are pleased that the work that we've been doing is having a positive impact. Now, we do huge amounts of work, both in schools and out of schools, around healthy eating, supporting those children who we pick up through the National Child Measurement Programme, who we pick up as being overweight and or obese. So we have been having services to support those children, and we are constantly working to update those to make sure that they are relevant and meet the needs of our community. So we have recently slightly changed how we deliver that service from being a very much a kind of child parent expecting them to attend specific weight management programs, moving away to a much more a program that's much more focused on physical activity, healthy eating, working with families, called Cook and Eat programs. And for the first time, probably in the last few years, we're now seeing lots of families wanting to attend. We're actually having to put a very small wait list in because we have families now wanting to attend and engage. So the key thing for us is about those families that have been identified, getting them engaged. We're also doing that prevention and early intervention. So we are working closely with schools to look at how they talk to children about healthy eating, but more importantly, and I would really want to stress that much more importantly, it's around getting families to be able to access healthy food and access physical activity in ways that is easier for them. So bearing in mind people's lives, the cost of food, the cost of healthy food, the some issues that that families may not feel like they have open spaces or safe open spaces. So we have a physical activity and a healthy weight delivery program that is currently going through the processes of being ratified within the council. So without going into all the detail that we have, I can happy to kind of send you a separate briefing around the work that we are doing for children around physical activity and obesity.
Can I just come in there? It seems to me that this is a critical item, and I think it should be something that we take forward to children's services rather than here at OSB. So can we talk through, and you can work with Eunice and myself if you wish, but I'd like to see you go to children's services, please.
Children's scrutiny, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry.
I thank you for that helpful reply. Just to be more helpful, if I could, if it goes on to children's services, are we able to try and set some targets? I mean, the targets doesn't mean to say it's something that's going to happen, but are we if we plateaued, are we now at a situation where we are looking to see a decrease? And if so, what percentage of decrease are we hoping to achieve, and in what timescales?
I do believe that would be better dealt with in children's services, to be honest.
Yep, that can take. All right. Whilst you're on, if I may, I do have another health question, if I could, please. It's with regard to prevalence of smoking. I've picked up all the issues that have arisen and why it's a big problem. One of the areas, though, that hasn't really been addressed too much, and it's not down to the council necessarily, but perhaps the council in collaboration with the police, and that is targeting illicit tobacco imports. I'd like to know exactly how we are working with the police to try and address the problem. You could go into any number of, that's a bit unfair, but you can go into certain shops in the town, I know, where you could go in and ask for a packet of cigarettes, or then you can ask for a packet of Polish cigarettes, which come up from underneath the counter. So there are issues that are going on, and I don't know how, if we're going to address the problem of smoking, the issue of cheap, and it's not cheap to smoke anyway now, it's about £15 a packet, but buying cheap illicit cigarettes is adding to the problem.
Yeah, are you happy for me to answer that? Yeah, yes, that's fine. So we are working really closely, and we work in partnership with environmental health on this exact issue. So environmental health do a lot of work around going in and identifying and prosecuting those premises and to the extent taking away licenses of anyone who is caught selling those illicit tobacco products. And that also extends to illicit vaping products as well, because that is becoming as vaping becomes more popular, we're seeing a lot more of that as well. So I think as a two-way, we are working partnership. We have joint funding where we work together with environmental health. So we can again, happy to bring a report. We brought a report probably about 6 months ago to I think CSRG. So we have been able to report on that, but happy to give, send a copy of that report if that would help. But we are working, as I say, very closely, and we do prosecute, and we have taken away licenses from some premises around illicit tobacco and vapes.
To our colleague from education, I picked up again, I think I've asked this in the past, but the results from special education, the special schools, has fallen where over a number of months, it was a number of quarters, it was 100% in the figures. It's now dropped down into the 80% for children attending special schools. Now, I think there was an answer that was given before. We're waiting for an inspection in a couple of years' time yet. Having been chair of governors on a number of schools around the town in the past, those figures must still stay in the system until the next inspections take place. It means to say, why have we dropped from 100%? Has there been a negative inspection that's taken place, or an inspection that has indicated that things aren't up to the same 100% as they were in the past?
If we're talking about attendance of children in special schools,
yeah.
It can be 100%, but it can vary significantly, because you would recognise that the children in our special schools have probably got the most complex medical needs. So it's often the case that children are absent because of medical needs and unable to attend. And therefore it may have been 100% and that may have been a fluke, but it does vary and it's up and down very much based on the needs. And then particularly as you come through a winter, when there are winter viruses and things, that does affect special schools more than it does mainstream schools. But I think the factors that we have and our attendance in special schools in Luton is not out of kilter with the attendance of special schools regionally and nationally.
Very well to have 100% over a number of the quarters. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just wanted to thank the officers for producing this report. It's been a lot easier to look at and read, and I really appreciate it's done in colour because that makes it very visually easy to read. Looking at the report overall at Q3, again, it's a Q3 report. I mean, it looks very positive. I mean, we've got 44 greens, 4 ambers, 16 reds. And I think it shows that we're heading in the right direction as a council, and the council is doing a good job. I mean, after 14 years of austerity, we're not going to turn things around after 9 months. So it's a positive step. I think Q4 will be challenging because given what's happening across the pond and for the individual in power in America and what he's doing and wrecking the global economy, I don't know where we'll be, but let's see where we are. But there's lots of positives in here that we can celebrate. For example, I mean, the airport passengers are going up, which is good for the local economy and everybody here. Education's doing well. I mean, Key Stage 2, we're at the national average, and we haven't been there for a long while, but we're there now, and that bodes well for the GCSE, where we're very close to national average. Apprenticeship seems to be going up. You know, we're building affordable homes, so things are looking good. I fear for what happens in the next quarter, given what Mr. Trump might do next. But I think it's good. And the question I wanted to ask the officers, and it was quite pleasing to see that the household support grant, where we've paid out nearly 2.7 million, I wanted to know how much of that is being paid to pensioners on low incomes who are not eligible for pension credit, because that would be really good to see how much of that is being paid to those pensioners.
Do we have anybody who can answer that one? Yes.
Hi, yeah, I cannot give you the precise figure, councillor, but it's in the realms of about 350,000. But I will get the precise figure and we can share it via Eunice with the panel as well, because we're doing the end of year spend at the moment, so we can set out how we've spent the whole grant for the panel as well.
Thank you, Kate. If you could share that'd be really good. It'll kind of show that we are supporting those that may have been influenced by national policy.
Thank you. I'd like to just close this section out for now. I do have to say that I thought the report was a lot easier to understand than previously. So I'd like to thank the officers for the work that they've done. I think we are making progress. Obviously still a long way to go, but we're making progress, and that's very encouraging. Of course, there are still going to be questions, and I know that this always generates a long discussion here in OSB. But thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the inputs that you've all made. Thank you. Right, item 8. Item 8 is the Bedford Local Nature Recovery Strategy. It says Bedford. I think that is the whole of Bedfordshire, is it not? It's not just Bedford, it's Bedfordshire. So can we, who's going to pick that one up for us?
Good morning, sorry, good evening, Chair, members, everyone. My name is Sunny Sahadavan. I'm currently the Interim Service Director for Sustainable Development. I'm going to introduce this item. I'm going to share my screen in a second and share the presentation. Richard James, who is employed by Central Beds Council, but is a shared resource for them, us, and Bedford Borough Council and he's funded by central government for all three authorities to bring forward this document. I'll introduce Richard and at the same time share my screen.
Thank you, Sunil. Evening, everyone. As Sunil mentioned, I'll do my introduction while Sunil's lining up the slides. Thank you. My name is Richard James. I do work for Central Bedfordshire Council, and I am the Local Nature Recovery Strategy Project Officer. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Sunil. So just another overview of what the strategy is. As Sunil mentioned, it covers all of Bedfordshire and the different roles amongst the different organisations involved in developing this Bedfordshire-wide strategy. So the strategy itself was developed from 2023 over the last couple of years. It is a requirement for every county in England to have a local nature recovery strategy, and that's under the Environment Act 2021. And that is essentially means that there'll be 48 different strategies around the country. Under that Act, there are designated responsible authorities, and then there are designated supporting authorities. For Bedfordshire, the responsible authority is Central Beds. We are responsible for producing the strategy with the supporting authorities of Bedford Borough, see yourselves in Luton, and Natural England. Next slide, please, Sunil. So the strategies themselves, they are two parts that link closely together. So we have a written document which has the requirements of basically describing Bedfordshire's natural environment, its landscape, the differences between the different character areas where we have sandy areas and through the Greensand Ridge, we've got the chalk downlands within the Chilterns, obviously some fairly significant urban areas with see yourselves in Luton, Bedford, Leighton Buzzard, and the significant infrastructure as well that we have in a relatively small county. So obviously we've got the M1, we've got two main rail lines, we've got an international airport, we've got a zoo, we've got a safari park, all these things that make up part of Bedfordshire. And as of today found out that it's going to have a Universal Studios as well. So there's a lot going on in Bedfordshire, and finding those places for nature is obviously important. So the document describes Bedfordshire, and then it identifies some actions, which are these priorities, which we think are the most relevant actions, or the priority actions to deliver nature recovery. There's around 20 or 30 or so, and I'll come on to what they look like in a moment. So that's within the written document. Accompanying the written document is a map, an online map, and that map identifies the existing important sites for nature. So that's sites of special scientific interest, local nature reserves, local wildlife sites, district wildlife sites, and also irreplaceable habitat, which is things like ancient woodland. And then also building on those priorities and what we want to deliver, identifies where those priorities could be delivered throughout Bedfordshire. And we're looking at around coverage of around 30% of Bedfordshire is where we think you could stakeholders could deliver a nature recovery. If you go on to the next slide, please, Sunil. So how it's been put together, we've done a range of engagement with a wide range of stakeholders. This involves the general public. We've had drop-in sessions, places like Stockwood. We've advertised through the eLuton newsletter. We've had an online survey. We've had events where Luton, I think Sunil has been to some of our events as well, where we've captured the thoughts of stakeholders through various different stages of kind of developing the idea of what the priorities could be through to the draft strategy that we have at the moment. So we're particularly keen to get feedback from obviously local authorities, conservation organisations, but also the landowner, farmer sector, who who have a big role to play in delivering some of these outcomes, as about 70% of Bedfordshire is farmed in some way. Next slide, please, Sunil. So just an overview of who we've contacted. So the key stakeholders, as I mentioned, the environmental organisations, and by that I mean the wildlife trusts, RSPB, the Green Sand Trust, the Chilterns Authority, and obviously those landowners, the local authorities, which again have a key role in this, community groups, the neighbouring counties. So we need to ensure that our strategies align in places like the Chilterns, where we obviously got some cross-border areas that are particularly valuable for nature, and those government agencies such as Natural England, Environment Agency and the Forestry Commission. We've had 2 stakeholder surveys, 5 workshops. We've advertised through various outlets to around 100,000 people through places like the Beds Life magazine, which goes out to about 70 of those, and as I mentioned, the e-Luton newsletter, and we've carried out 7 drop-in locations. That's just an overview. We've had lots of one-to-one discussions as well, so there's been various different activities and sort of focus group meetings as well to help develop this. Our online platform has had some really good visits for a new strategy. These are the first ones. We've had just over 5,000 visitors to our platform, and about 450 just over new subscribers who are keen to find out more as we go through to finalising the strategy and the public consultation. Next slide, please, Sunil. So just to give you an overview of what we mean by a priority for nature recovery, I mentioned we have within the written document some actions that we think could be delivered to support nature. They come in different habitat groups, and I'll come on to those in a moment, but essentially they're describing what we want the strategy to achieve, which is the outcome, and then the measure is the kind of the practical action you could do to deliver that, and that is we want obviously more nature-rich areas and urban green spaces, and to do that, things like allowing grass to grow through the spring and early summer helps obviously wildflower meadows, invertebrates, and also hedgerows, and they make green spaces. We know the benefits that green space has to local communities, and being able to reach these spaces within a 15-minute walk, and that's something that we looked at when we identified where these areas could be delivered, and where areas could be improved. If they're already doing something, there may be more that could be done to make them even more nature friendly, which benefits people. As I mentioned, the benefits to people's mental and physical health through engaging with nature, having access to that green space is really valuable. Next slide, please, Sunil. So just an idea on how that links to the map. Just bringing on the measure that was on the last slide. This is an example of where with Luton we've mapped some of these locations. We have other measures which map other parts of Luton, for example, along the River Lee, additional woodland opportunities, some orchard opportunities where orchards can be restored or created. This is just an example of one of those measures. And as I say, it's to look at those green spaces where they're within a 15-minute walk of people who we want to improve nature access, and that's as I mentioned, as well as benefiting nature itself, benefits people. There's obviously a range of measures just outside the Luton borders along the Chilterns, which is obviously a valuable place for people within Luton to visit. Places like Dunstable Downs are a significant habitat for Bedfordshire. Next slide, please, Sunil. So, as I mentioned, we have I've shown you one of the built-up areas and previously developed land outcomes and measures. We have a range of others that are split up between different habitat types. So for the different kinds of areas and the different kind of actions that you could deliver in those areas, and they're all captured within the written document, which obviously then links to the locations of where you could deliver those measures on the online map. Next slide, please, Sunil. So how we're to use these? So we had some very recent guidance, as in the last few weeks, from the government as to how we should be utilising the LNRSs when they're finalised. And there's several different ways, and the next slide clarifies some of these in a bit more detail as well. But essentially, in local plan development, the LNRS provides a guide to where nature recovery can be delivered, and they should be considered as part of the local plan development. Where are those really key areas that we think could be delivered for nature? And actually, in some of those cases, development might be an enabler to delivering for nature through things like biodiversity net gain, which is mentioned further down. It's a consideration within the planning system, so it's for local authorities to decide how essentially to utilise the strategy when determining individual planning decisions. It will be ultimately used for environmental stewardship, so it will link to government land management funding, which some local authorities may be utilising with tenant farmers in central Bedfordshire. And there is the enhanced biodiversity duty on local authorities to show how they've had regard to the local nature recovery strategy in various policies and decisions. So it's essentially it should be a guide to those decision making process. But if you come on to the next slide, please, Sunil. What it doesn't do is actually give any level of protection or prevent land uses. It isn't. The areas that are being mapped are for those owning the land to identify whether they've got an opportunity to deliver for nature and the potential funding that could bring versus some other kind of development that they might be looking at. But it does not prevent them doing something else. It is a guide for those who want to deliver nature recovery. They're not specific site plans, so they don't go. It's a strategy, so it's relatively high level. They don't assess the ground truthing exactly what's on a particular field in a particular area. That would still need the landowner, whoever that may be, to look at that site and work out exactly how that will work on their in their area. And it doesn't give any permissions to create habitat, to fell trees or to plant trees. You would still need the relevant planning and permitting as you do now to deliver any of those actions. So it's I think a good way of thinking about it is it's a guide. It's a starting point to inform decisions, whether it's through local authorities or landowners. Think about where is important for nature and how that could be delivered within those areas. Next slide, please, Sunil. The timeline. So we're currently hoping to go to public consultation in May. We're in our pre-consultation phase, so the document is only in draft at the moment. It is obviously subject to changes through the public consultation, but we obviously are engaging with supporting authorities, obviously yourselves, Bedford and Natural England, to get comments and ultimately the consent that they're happy for us to progress to public consultation. Obviously, we'll have that consultation. The aim is at the moment to hold it somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks, trying to avoid the school holidays, and then we'll update the final draft, which will be then reshared following that input at the consultation stage, where we can update that and reshare that for further approvals and adoption. I think that may be the last slide. Sunil, is that? Yep. Fantastic. Thank you, Sunil.
I'm going to ask do a chair's privilege bit for a minute. My concern, there's a lot of very good detailed information in the report, but I found it incredibly difficult to be able to follow and read it. I ended up having a mixture of printed things, trying to look at it in detail because all of the print is so small. I found it very difficult to pick up all of the detail, even zooming it up on my computer. So that was tricky. I also would like to ask, how are you going to present all of this detail to the general public, and how are you going to convince them that if it's not binding, why they should get involved?
Yeah, so excellent points on the visuals and the usability of the strategy. We are developing a consultation document, which is a summary document of the strategy, which summarises the priorities within the strategy, and we'll also have we have a dedicated web page which you can kind of skip to certain bits that you're interested in to try and improve that accessibility. They are lengthy documents. We do have certain things that we have to include in them under the regulations, so there is that does make them slightly longer than I think we would hope. On the document sort of font size and readability, we can certainly look at that. It's currently font size 12, I think, but we can certainly look at how we can make an accessible version of that. To the second point, and to try and ensure that the public are interested in this, we've got a range of measures and things that we want people to buy into, and that's why we've done quite a lot of stakeholder engagement in trying to get those stakeholders on board for things that are deliverable. So for the general public, there's obviously measures within their own gardens and within urban areas that they can deliver, and that's something that's key. But you're quite right. One of the challenges is, and it is one of the challenges that we've fed back to government, is there's not a legally binding protection for these sites. So it is up to local authorities to decide how they have regard to the strategy, and that is a challenge that we've fed back, and we will test the water, I think. But what the strategy does do is try and focus. It does have an impact on where biodiversity net gain may be delivered by providing an uplift, essentially. So if you're looking to deliver biodiversity net gain in areas that we've mapped within the LNRS, it provides an uplift to their score on their metric. So the metric that they submit with their planning application, which explains how they will meet that 10% biodiversity net gain. If they're delivering in an area where we've identified, it gives it that uplift. So it's trying to make it, as well as a willingness for people to do it, there is a financial incentive, which ultimately it should be linking into those government funding streams, potentially, whether that's through environmental land management schemes or specific bespoke pots of money for nature recovery, whether that's through central government or whether that's delegated through to the responsible authorities, supporting authorities. We are awaiting some confirmation of funding for this financial year from DEFRA. We're confident that we will have some, but we don't know quite how much or what it can be used for yet. So these are discussions that are ongoing. But it's a challenge, and it is it's something that we're giving a lot of thought to as to how we get this message across. We're working with our various comms teams to make sure that it works and people can understand what it's for.
Thank you, Councillor Franks.
Thank you, Chair. There are three things I'd like to raise here. I'd like to deal with them separately, if you don't mind. The first is that the contribution to Luton's contribution to this process is going to sorely miss input from Trevor Tween, who sadly passed away a fortnight ago. I think it would be appropriate if the interim chief executive could be approached to ask whether, if it's appropriate, our appreciation of the huge contribution that Trevor Tween has made to nature conservation in Luton over the years is appreciated. That clearly should only go to his family if the interim chief executive thinks it would be appropriate to approach them. So that's the first point.
Yes, you may continue if you wish, and then I'll go across to Councillor Stevens.
Okay, the second point then is it's obviously helpful that the three authorities are working together on a programme as wide-ranging as this. No, I'm not arguing against that, but there are very substantial differences in the needs of the three authorities. And one example that came up when I was having a conversation with some colleagues earlier this afternoon was Luton's chalk streams. There are probably hundreds of them on the chalk hills, all feeding down the hills and into the River Lee. I think they are probably much rarer in Central Beds and Bedford. And it would be good to be assured that substantial differences like that, and it's not the only one, but it's a significant one, substantial differences like that are in fact going to be taken into consideration, which leads me, if you like, to my third point, which is which department is going to be leading Luton's contribution. And in order to save time, I'll give you the last one as well, which is on the timetable, it says August 25, final draft review by supporting authorities. I think it's important that this board actually sees the final supporting report before it ultimately ends up, I guess, either with full council or the executive. It would be good to know which of those two bodies it will be going to.
Are we able to get a reply to Councillor Frank's questions?
Yeah, it's three main questions there from Councillor Franks. I'll let Richard answer the question around chalk streams, and I can pick up the other questions Councillor Franks and comments Councillor Franks made.
Yeah, thank you, Sunny. Yeah, we so chalk streams, as you mentioned, are one of the rarest habitats in the world, not just in the UK. They one of the things that we were really keen to pick up is by working with local catchment partnerships, is the raising awareness and the of the importance of those chalk streams. We do have separate measures for chalk streams over other rivers. So we do have some chalk streams in Central Beds. We have the Ivel and the Flit, which come through from Central Bedfordshire. But obviously within Luton, you've got the River Lee, headwaters of the River Lee, which obviously feeds all the way down through to the Thames. So they are a separate measure and identified separately, and they have a specific section within the strategy itself highlighting the importance of these chalk streams, not just in England, obviously, but in Bedfordshire as well. So there definitely was a very strong feel from the stakeholders involved that the chalk streams should receive good recognition, and those measures that would support things like trout that breed in them, which are one of the focuses that we're looking at, along with removing barriers to fish migration, re-wiggling, one of the least technical term, to re-meander those rivers to put them into a more natural state. All part of the measures that we're looking at.
Neil, are you going to come back in?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think, thank you, Councillor Franks, for saying those kind words about our colleague, Trevor Tween. I will sadly miss him as well. He was a valued colleague, and, it was clear from his time with us how passionate he felt about Luton and biodiversity and ecology in Luton. I'm sure colleagues in Democratic Services will take back your other comments around, paying some sort of official tribute to him. So I can't say anything more on that. But what I would say is Trevor's contributed to this draft document very much so. So you know, his work, shall we say, is captured in the document that Richard James has drafted and bringing forward. Just on your other point, Councillor Franks, about which department, I suppose, I mean, this is a document on behalf of all of the 3 Bedford councils and Luton Council as a whole. But given that it most, I suppose, sits with planning, it seems to be the most natural fit. So it would be us in the planning service that will kind of lead it, obviously with Richard's help, trying to take it through the process. But as I mentioned about Trevor, other parts of the council have been engaged in this process already. And your point about further engagement after the consultation period and bringing the final document through the democratic process in Luton, yes, that is our intention. And just to point out the governance around this, the government, central government, I should say, have clubbed together different authorities across the country, and you know, I'm not 100% clear what methodology they've used, but in most cases you'd have a county council in partnership with the other authorities, and they would have, shall we say, a parental role, or you know, the title is responsible authority. We in this group of 3 are slightly different because we don't have an overall county council. So the title of responsible authority has been vested in CBC. Now, what that does mean is, I'm pretty sure CBC will want to include us and Bedford Borough Council in comments we make and decisions we make through our own democratic process. But ultimately, you know, they can make a decision themselves on behalf of all 3 authorities, and so what we're trying to do, and some of this is not perfect in terms of Luton's own democratic process. We're trying to, shall we say, track our progress so it doesn't fall out of sync with CBC's own process, so that we can feed into that process as much as possible. We'd hope, you know, there is some kind of consensus around the final document. But as you can imagine, if it's going through the democratic process of all 3 authorities, and we come to the end, there will be some areas where things aren't quite aligned. So we've been giving some thought around how we can try and manage that process. And we haven't settled on anything, but what we could do is, and Richard, you can come in here if you've had further thoughts on this and further discussions with the other 2 authorities. Once it's been to executive the second time round, and we're happy to adopt the document on our behalf, I'm sure there'll be recommendations and modifications. But then if we as a council give delegated authority to the portfolio holder, and all 3 portfolio holders then meet, I'm sure that there could be a situation where they could be an agreement between all 3 authorities before the document is finally adopted. that might be the best way of trying to navigate this process. I don't know if you've had any further thoughts on that, Richard. You can help our members with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Neil says, it's we're in a not unique, but certainly an unusual situation for these strategies in that we have the three unitary authorities. It has made things slightly more complex into trying to make sure that the various timelines for the different authorities and different processes are aligned as much as we can, so we're not ending up with three different versions doing the rounds. So I think for the final sign-off, as Sunil suggested, we've discussed whether we ultimately there could be that tri-party delegated authority to look at this final strategy, take into account those comments. It's because there's potentially Bedford, for example, Bedford Borough Council could be happy with the document as it is, but obviously Luton may have some changes they want to make. How do we address that challenge? The document they may well then need to change slightly to what Luton have approved. So it does need further thought. We do have regular meetings every couple of months with Boss Sunil, but it's live at the moment, and with a representative from Bedford and Natural England to talk through some of these issues. We're discussing the consultation at the moment with your colleagues and Bedford as well, to make sure that the consultation as well is done evenly across the three boroughs. So there's a lot of challenges that we're working our way through, but we're hoping that ultimately there is perhaps a way we can look at that delegated authority amongst the three authorities.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. My first comment is I read the report with extreme interest, especially because I'm a member of the Climate Committee as well, and it has implications. Climate change has implications across many of the aspects that you've included in the report. But I also think there's a wake-up call in this report, which we should take very seriously. There are a number of fauna and animals, or flora and fauna in Bedfordshire, which could be on the verge of extinction if we are not careful. I think there was some allusion, to some newts, for example. The fact that eels are in a major decline as they come across from the Sargasso Sea and come through to the rivers. There are some unique plant life, which is specifically only to be found, I think, in one part of Bedfordshire. So all of these, if we're not careful, if we're not very careful about how we treat the environment, where we're building going forward, we are in danger of losing many of these fauna and flora in the county, fauna and flora in the county. And I think there is a role perhaps in the future going forward for the government to get more involved in safeguarding and giving information to authorities and authority to the authorities, if you like, to carry out some kind of enforcement, some kind of protection, to make sure that we do our best to look after the environment going forward. We are, after all, the current gatekeepers, but we have to also look after the environment on behalf of the future generations to come, and they will look back on us, with anger if we're not doing what we need to do in the present environment. The other thing that struck me as I was reading the report, that there are a lot of measures that you've identified. I think about 30 measures, and I'm wondering whether, especially with the shortage of funds, and whether we're going to get the funds that you need, but whether there ought to be perhaps a way of presenting the information on those things which are quick wins, those which kind of could be accomplished within the medium term, and those which will take a little longer to try to accomplish. And I think that might be more helpful if that is presented when it goes out to public consultation as a way forward, because they would have a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve through the three authorities. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but it's, you know, the climate and the environment are key things that I am passionately interested in. So thank you for the report, I could say on that.
Thank you, Councillor. And absolutely, I think those quick wins. At the moment, we're still waiting on exactly what funding will be available for the different delivery mechanisms, which is again another challenge, because those quick wins may change depending on what comes forward from the government, which we're hoping to hear. We're hoping to hear this month, but we will see exactly what this funding will be spent on. There should be aligning a lot of the measures. What we've tried to do is align them with existing funding mechanisms through countryside stewardship, for example, where landowners get paid per hectare to deliver nature recovery, depending on the actions that they deliver. So there's most of these should be relatively quick wins. Some may take longer than others. I think it's the cost of removing weirs to rivers can take a while and can be very expensive. So we rely on potentially developments to enable that in some of those locations. Deculverting rivers, developments like through power courts provide the opportunity to deliver that. So yes, absolutely. If there's I will look into that about the quick wins though. I think that's certainly a really good point. And again, I just want to echo Sunil's view on Trevor. He has been put into this, and I was sorry to hear of his loss. So thank you for. I think that's a very good idea to kind of contribute and acknowledge his input into nature recovery in Bedfordshire.
In the interest of time, I'll meet the last question with Councillor Carr.
Yeah, very quickly, and just to reiterate what's been said, I mean, with all the environmental changes and with the developments and all the mega projects that are planned in the future in this county, it is important that we preserve our nature. And just building on to what Councillor Frank said, although it's a joint strategy, it is important for us to pull out the uniqueness of Luton and to really somehow identify or contemplate how much it's going to cost us to preserve the sites which are identified, or if not more, because when you have a joint strategy, identified local authority will put in for funding, and we don't want to be in a position where we're saying, well, we don't know how much we need. So we need to be quite clear what that demand would be, how much it's going to cost, and how that's going to be distributed. So, you know, maybe you can comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're as with many things with this strategy, the delivery aspect of it, how that will work with the responsible authority and the supporting authorities, what my role will be going forward, and ensuring that obviously resources and things are delivered equitably across all three authorities. We are planning to work quite closely with the local nature partnership, which is chaired by Paul Leinster, which obviously covers isn't bound by boroughs. It covers all of Bedfordshire. So they will be in a very good place to provide that input. But obviously working closely with Luton, with yourselves, with your officers, to identify where those key opportunities to deliver, and where those funding opportunities that will be coming from the government at some point in we hope, we expect, where we can ensure that isn't all coming to CBC, that it is equally spread out across the county. Obviously thinking about what's going on in North Bedfordshire, where they've got lots of farmland, but focus, and also making sure that urban areas get that equal funding opportunity through those measures. And that's something that going forward we will need to discuss across the three authorities, how that will work, and how it will be funded by central government. because at the moment the funding that we have to deliver the strategy, there's nothing, we've no guaranteed funding coming at the moment to coordinate this strategy. The funding that we have is there to deliver the creation of the strategy, the ongoing coordination and delivery of the outcomes. We haven't had that confirmed funding yet as to what that will look like. So we're waiting with bated breath on that to see what comes through, and we'll know more then how much that will be and what it can be used for.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for bringing the report to us. We look forward to seeing how it moves on. But thank you very much for bringing the report to us. We look forward to the next stage.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Now, an apology to the officers. I took the items in the order that I was given them, which unfortunately put the one in the wrong order. So we're left with one item which should have preceded that one, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. I was doing what I was told. Anyway, it's the Luton Employment Skills Plan, and that's our final item other than the work programme. So if we can take that one forward, please.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Joanna Mayhead and I'm Programme Manager for Skills and Employment, and with me is Debbie Poole-Hunt, Head of Service for Skills and Employment. You will have received all of the documents and appendices, but I am going to quickly run through the presentation that we did and then take questions after that. I will just pulling it up. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through some major successes in February. Obviously, Moreton House, which is our new training and skills hub. Then Barnfield College opened a £38 million construction and engineering centre. And we had our first Luton Apprenticeship Awards, which you've already heard about, but it was held to recognise and celebrate the achievements of Luton's apprentices. And I think that award will go from strength to strength. We had 3,861 Bedfordshire University students engaged with Luton-based businesses in 2024. 2,000 residents attended community job fairs across 12 Luton wards in 24 and rated them 97% useful. 284 people volunteered 3,372 hours at the BBC Radio 1 Big Weekend. Luton adult learning participation increased from 3,240 in 2021 to 4,741 in 24. 520 apprenticeship achievements for 23-24, up from 460 22-23. 100% of FE adult learning and HE providers in Luton have good Ofsted ratings. And whilst we're always looking to improve NEET numbers, they were below the national average for students aged 16 and 17 in Luton in 23 and 24, whereas they've increased nationally and in Central Bedfordshire, Milton Keynes, West Northamptonshire and North Northamptonshire. The plan is broken up into strategic priorities. We have seen increases in high-level employment. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Second. I beg your pardon. Right. We've seen increases in high-level sector employment in logistics, creative arts, R&D, digital, business support, security, legal, engineering and education. And the proportion of people in professional occupations has increased from 19,200 to 20,100. Job postings were lower in 2024, which matches the national trend and that of all the other authorities in the South Midlands.
That's the jobs postings, I beg your pardon. Strategic priority 2, in 2024, 63.2% of year 11 students achieved both English and maths at grade 4 or above, compared to 65.5% nationally and compared to 62.1% in 2023. So we are improving, and so we're going upwards there. 6,508 students aged 19 plus participated in FE in 2023-24 compared to 5,944 the year before. We had 1,060 apprenticeship starts for 23-24, up from 1,050. All right. That's the apprenticeship achievements data. You can see that there's been increases across all of the areas in our region, as well as in Luton. Strategic priority 3, we've had a rise in claimant numbers from 8,355 in December 23 to 11,195 in March 25. Luton has a higher proportion than the national average of part-time and self-employment, which skews our claimant count. And it's also increased due to the move to universal credit, which has moved families on legacy benefits to individual universal credit claims. Gross weekly pay in 24 has risen for Luton residents. It's been increasing since 2021. It was 671 compared to 730 for the UK. Gross weekly pay in Luton rather than Luton residents is £761, which is higher compared to £730 in the UK. 2.7% of 16 and 17-year-olds were NEET for 23 and 24, which is below the national average. That's the NEETs data. Then we have claimant figures for the local authority area. You can see it is higher in Luton, but it's also higher in every other area of the South Midlands and nationally. These are the employment rates for people aged 16 plus. Unfortunately, we're not reaching the employment level for the national average at this stage. And then local area economic activity, our economic inactivity is above the national average. Strategic priority 4. There's been an increase in adult and lifelong learning participation. Luton Employability Day attracted 400 registrations from young people from a Black, Asian and mixed heritage background. Over 30 businesses and organisations participated. Barnfield had 939 students benefit from meaningful work experience and 1,327 students have benefited from employer encounters. There's been lots of examples of social value, but I'll briefly run through these ones. London Luton Airport, in partnership with Skills Builder and the 14 to 19 team at Luton Council, developed an essential skills programme targeted at Key Stage 3 students. Glencar at Newlands Park Junction 10 have had 103 local people employed, 2 apprentices and 10 college and school events. Radio 1 Big Weekend had 284 people volunteer. 72% of those volunteers expressed that they'd acquired experience beneficial for their future employment, and 96 of those volunteers enrolled in training offered by Luton's Adult Learning Team. Jowtech System hosted 80 students and staff from Luton secondary schools on National Manufacturing Day. Next steps include we'll be reviewing our implementation plan to meet the new economic growth strategy. We have Connect to Work and DWP Get Britain Working delivery plans. We're developing the apprenticeship brokerage hub for Luton. These appendices are more recent appendices, so they'll be on Appendix D, which you'll receive in your pack after this. The airport expansion, so that's projected to add 11,000 new high quality and well-paid jobs for the airport and supply chain across the region. Universal Studios, opening in 2031, is set to create 28,000 jobs, including 8,000 permanent roles in hospitality, tourism and the creative industries. We're also setting up a construction skills academy to ensure that our residents are able to take advantage of the job opportunities that will be available. The impact of the community job fairs will be measured by a company called J2 Research, and they will be contacting attendees and reporting back their findings, which will give us more insight into destination data from the job fairs, including interviews, job offers and job starts. Economic inactivity. All our adult learning courses are set up with the ultimate aim of increasing employability. We continue to focus on supporting economically inactive women to enter the labour market by offering ESOL and family learning courses in schools. We have supported 248 women from South Asia in the last year. Once people enrol to learn how to communicate with a school, we start conversations about progressing onto accredited ESOL courses as a step towards work. We also hold the community job fairs in local communities as a way of getting the message out there about work opportunities. The Vauxhall Task Force, we're working with staff facing redundancy with Passport to Employment and Managing Change courses. We're offering individual support at drop-in sessions and hosting 2 job fairs at Malton House. The council has set up a government-led Vauxhall Task Force to address the economic and social response to the closure. The Skills Tiger Group will feed into the task force and Hazel will be on the board. And AI integration into local businesses. The University of Bedfordshire has partnered with Luton Council to launch an innovative AI transformation initiative aimed at supporting local businesses and adopting AI technology, backed by £10,000 of funding from UK SPF. The project, which began in March, is working to equip businesses at various stages of AI readiness.
So, thank you, Jo. Jo has just talked about some of the things that have been achieved over the last year. So in the annual review, it's about what happened in 2024 for us. And I'd just like to spend a couple of moments just talking about some of the things that are upcoming, just so that you are aware of. Throughout tonight's discussions, you've heard mention Connect to Work. This is a DWP initiative about getting people into employment, so those who need health and skill support. So it is not just for disabled, but also for another targeted groups of people. For example, carers, ex-carers, care leavers, those who are asylum seekers, etc. And there's a long list of those. So this is being run as part of the South Midlands area, but each local authority has been allocated an amount of money. So for Luton, if all targets were met, then that would mean over the course of 5 years, £4.8 million of investment into this. So this is helping some of our residents who've got special educational needs, our care leavers. As part of that delivery plan that we have put together, some of our focuses are working with our colleagues in education, so in terms of our NEETs and those that are potentially with, crime and violence. As I said, care leavers, some of our disabled residents, and working to make sure that we give them the best opportunities. Now, Connect to Work is about a supported employment model. So over the course of the 5 years, we are looking at supporting just over 1,200 individuals across those 5 years. And the supported employment element is about being with that individual. So we will have special employment support specialists that will go with those individuals and support them and the employer to integrate them into the work environment. And for some of those, that might be a 12-month programme. So Get Britain Working. So this really is a follow-on from Connect to Work. So this is all about how we are going to get people back into employment or into better employment. Now, what the government have asked local areas to do is create a delivery plan. So it is investing £1 billion into supporting people who are disabled or have long-term health conditions, etc. We don't know how that £1 billion is going to be allocated to local authorities, and we won't know that yet. What they have asked is collectively, we will put together delivery plans. So this isn't just Luton Council, this is the local DWP, Chamber of Commerce, the FE colleges, universities, primary care, for example. So we're working with BLMK ICB, and it's pulling everybody together to come up with what do we need to do in Luton in order to support these disadvantaged groups into employment. Once those have been submitted, and that will be between July and September, that is when we're expecting the government to then say, this is how much each local authority will then be allocated to enable them to deliver on those plans. So in order to facilitate some of that, we will be starting a skills tiger group. Now, I've already mentioned that we've got the Employment and Skills Partnership Board, but this particular group will be focusing on actually driving some of those projects forwards. So we've listed a few of them there for you. So developing joined up skills pathways. So if we are going to go and focus, for example, on advanced manufacturing and engineering, if our local FE college and university aren't offering those kinds of courses and provision, we are not going to be able to support our local residents into getting those jobs. So it's making sure that those skills pathways are aligned. We've already heard from Joe this evening about apprenticeship numbers are increasing and are set to increase. We are absolutely, through the brokerage service, working with those large levy paying organisations to increase their numbers and also to utilise non or unspent levy to SMEs to increase those numbers and helping our SMEs to grow. So we're also looking at construction skills, and so working with Barnfield and their new building to make sure that actually we've got the pipeline in which to deliver these projects. We've got the stage, we've got Power Court, we've got Universal Studios coming and the airport expansion. All of these need to have construction related skills before we even get into some of those other roles once the actual expansion has happened and Universal Studios open. So there is a huge amount on the horizon, and so we just wanted to give you an insight into some of those things that are happening. So just before I hand you over for questions, I think that our portfolio holder, Councillor Javeria Hussain, would just like to add a few words.
Thank you, ladies. I hope that's all right with you, Chair, if you don't mind.
Carry on.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I did say before, thank you for letting me attend the meeting, to support the sisterhood here. That's really important because it's a sisters event here. As you can see, there's a lot of things that have happened in 2024, but on my insistence, I should say, that there was a slide put up there to tell you what's coming down the pipeline, because I think that is really, really important. And whilst I wasn't here for the first agenda item at this evening's meeting, I was actually listening to it on the way in here. And then there's a few things I just wanted to quickly touch on. Firstly, what we are really going to be focusing on as part of the inclusive economy refresh. So basically, the inclusive economy refresh, which is going through consultation stage at this moment in time, was about to start. It talks about a resilient, it talks about an inclusive, and it also talks about a productive economy. Underpinning that is your labour workforce, which is absolutely important. Now, we know that there are hard to reach communities. We know there are particular wards where there is high levels of socio-economic deprivation. We know there are women, for example, in particular communities that are, economically inactive, not through sometimes fault of their own because they have other responsibilities, but they want to enter the labour market. So as part of our education, skills and employment refresh, one of the things we will be doing, and we'll be reporting back to you on that in due course, is targeted intervention programs that we will be doing. So that's, for example, supporting, from the top of my head, Southeast Asian women who want to enter the labour market, who need support with language courses, who need support with skilling up, basic IT skills and others to be able to enter the jobs market, to be able to apply for jobs. So that is something that we will be focusing on. Second of all, as you know, in Luton, there are a number of wards that are significantly deprived. I'm talking about high levels of socio-economic deprivation. From the top of my head, I think of wards such as Dallow, Farley, Biscot South. Those wards are important. And when I talk about a productive economy, when I talk about an inclusive economy, it's about ensuring, that we ensure that there is targeted intervention, particularly in those wards, to ensure that those individuals or residents that aren't able to access the jobs market through various reasons, we help them. We provide them with those opportunities, which is why the employment and job skills fairs, the community jobs fairs that obviously, are in their, I suppose, going through a very busy stage at this moment in time. They started off with those particular awards because those are high in deprivation, but obviously we will be continuing those anyway. So these are some of the things we are definitely doing. There are things in the pipeline, like for example, the development consent order. That was brilliant. I mean, as part of that, what Luton Rising is doing, if I'm wear that hat on, is working with the employment and skills provision at Luton Borough Council to ensure that there's things such as a aviation skills academy that's been set up to support those students or young people, particularly who want to acquire skills to enter the labour market in the aviation industry. It was really pleasing to see that over 13,000 people are now employed as of 2020, between 2023 to 2024. That was an increase of about 13% in the airport ecosystem. That was really positive news on that. But there is something that I'm spearheading to ensure that particularly around apprenticeships and particularly around, better well-paid jobs, particularly for young people and residents in LU1 to LU4 postcodes are there. And that's something that I'm spearheading and working with the operator closely on. So these are some of the things I just wanted to touch on. I mean, the work hasn't stopped yet. There is plenty we need to do to achieve our ultimate ambition in ensuring that, that we don't leave anybody behind, particularly when it comes to jobs and opportunities. Thank you.
Councillor Franks, you asked to come in.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just two quick points. First of all, there's a lot of really useful work going on, and I think we ought to thank all of those involved for the efforts that they've been putting in. Following that, then I do have one question. There are several references in here to 103 local people being employed at the Junction 10 development. The two questions, I guess, come from that, really. I've been around the area several times, and I may have missed something, I may be mistaken, but as far as I can see, there's only one building so far that's complete, and it's a vacant warehouse. The developers are awaiting an occupier. So it'd be interesting to know where these 103 people are actually employed, please.
Glen Carr were the developer that built the building, so they're not the people that will be operating the building. So that was 103 people employed in the construction of that building rather than the future operators.
Okay, so since the building's now complete, I guess those 103 people are no longer employed there. I can't let this opportunity go without mentioning that granting outline consents for developments like this without knowing who the future occupiers are going to be, what is the nature of their business, how many people they're going to employ, is a very, very foolish thing to do. And Luton Council is going to have to stop doing it, because vast warehouses like this do not generate employment in any significant way. They do generate massive amounts of heavy goods vehicle traffic, but a warehouse of that size could probably be operated nowadays by no more than a dozen or 15 people, most of whom will be sitting in front of computer screens, programming the robots that are actually doing the work. So thanks very much indeed. There's a huge sign at Junction 10 advertising future developments for warehouses. So please don't be disappointed when you find that the whole development probably only employs a few dozen people.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. First of all, I would agree with Councillor Franks, and I think I'm certainly pretty disappointed. In some case, in that case, I think the council was either misled or probably had a bigger expectation. That was an enabler side which was supposed to give Luton a very, very different offer and much higher unemployment, and really disappointed that we've been let down. And I don't really like to mention who. But moving forward, learning the lessons from the past, we have to make sure that the outline planning permission is watertight. And we don't compromise ourselves. But coming back to this presentation, and thank you for reassuring that there will be a targeted intervention to support those people who are economically deprived. My understanding was that some of the work should have been doing already. It's not a future thought or plan. The employment strategy was meant to do that. And what I would like to know that how many people that you have already targeted and have got to employment. If you have that, if you don't, you can bring that next time. Now, we got to be careful. It's really positive that we got DCO, great for the town. Really positive that we got Universal coming along. They're 10-year projects. We've got to look at here and now. And we've got to see when we've got unemployment, which is very high, and if the future projection is going to be even more higher, and when our job posting is one of the lowest in the region, and our apprenticeship levels again one of the lowest. I want some reassurance. Is that do we really have an idea here and now in the next 2 to 3 years what those jobs would be? And when we look at construction, don't forget the builders who've got the land, and I know this because I'm in the game. Yeah, for those builders who've got the land, don't want to build here and now because they're not likely to achieve the profits that they want to. They're going to wait and hold. So if we think that we're going to all of a sudden have hundreds of these construction jobs, we might be kidding ourselves. So we need to have a reset and manage our expectations and look at between now and the next 5 years, what are the jobs that are going to be posted? Are the people being trained according to those that demand? And have we got a true measure of the unemployment, employment, and opportunity? And only then you will be effectively delivering that strategy.
Javera, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, a couple of things. Can't speak for Junction 10, but all I can assure Councillor Franks is that with any future developments, particularly in the town centre as part of regeneration, I am personally ensuring I am involved in those conversations early on, and so is the education as well as the employment team, to ensure that we're having those questions earlier on with developers and ensuring that those are factored in. So that is something that we are going to be looking at, and it is lessons learned if it is. Second of all, Councillor Khan, just to clarify here, the work isn't just starting now, it's always happening, but obviously there's more funding available, so there's more that we can do. So, we've already already ensured, perhaps my wording was incorrect, but we are working to ensure that particular wards that I mentioned, and also those communities that are economically deprived, are hard to get to, that we are providing them the support, which is, and the community jobs fairs is a very good example of that. Insofar as the DCO is concerned and other developments are concerned, as part of the employment and skills refresh, the main thing of that refresh is perhaps a reset to ensure that there are projections of what jobs and what opportunities, realistic expectations of what jobs and opportunities will be available, how we ensure that the local labour market are skilled up to meet those jobs and those expectations. And one of the things we are also doing as part of that is basically, refreshing also the skills and employment board, which is a proper refresh as well, where we're bringing on better partners locally to ensure that, any skilling up that we do, we're working in partnership with employers, because that's really, really important, because there is a supply and demand thing at the moment. So it's measuring expectations, and there will be measurements. We will be closely monitoring. There will be reports published and all that kind of stuff. So there will be monitoring to ensure. But at the same time, I can say to you, these are exciting things. But at the same time, we have our feet firmly to the ground, and it's about managing expectations. So, we wouldn't. I don't think I would be saying anything if I don't think I could meet expectations. But nevertheless, you're absolutely right. It's about monitoring and outcomes, and that is something that is firmly as part of the refresh.
I'm going to bring the meeting to a halt, but I just to follow up perhaps on Councillor Franks's point, we too often have had planning consent given in outline terms, but then have subcontracted any further decisions directly to officers. I would very strongly suggest that in the future we actually bring those sorts of further decisions back to development control, because it hasn't served us well in the past. Okay, one final point from you, Councillor Stevens.
There are a couple of points, Chair, and I insist on raising.
Okay, we appear not to be finishing.
I insist on raising them. Sorry. Let me. First of all, congratulations. A lot of good work here and a lot of good work in the system. I want to pick up what my colleague said, the Deputy Chair. I'm not quite sure what kind of strategy we have for apprenticeships. We talked about successes. I think there was 520 apprenticeship achievements. I'm not sure what an achievement is. But I'm not sure that we actually have a strategy. I'm not sure that we have a target. I see bits and pieces mentioned about, some apprenticeships here, like at Barnfield, something at TUI. So I would like to know what our strategy is, what our targets are. Well, not me. I think this OSB needs to know what the targets are. And how we're going to achieve them. That is the first part. Secondly, there's a lot of detail here about University of Bedfordshire, and I know it intimately, so I will just raise the issues here. We've talked about the fact that 3,861 students were engaged with Luton-based businesses. That's fine. I used to teach on the programme at master's level, so I know exactly how these projects work. What would be better to understand is at the end of their projects, how many students actually entered the job market, how many overseas students actually were able to take up post-study work, 2-year post-study work placements, based on the projects that they had undertaken, because it's all very well putting this down as being a shining example. Yes, it is, and any work placement is a good example for anybody. But it's no good putting it down as a major success unless we know how it leads into the career objectives of the students. So that's one thing I want to know. Coming back to the construction, this is a vital area. It's not just Luton that is going to be fighting for the construction workers. If there's 1 million houses to be built across across the country. All the authorities are going to be fighting for these. So universal coming in, great news. Have we got the construction workers? Even for Power Court, have we got the construction workers? Have we got for Terminal 2 the construction workers? And I'd like the officers, please, to answer the questions before you come in, actually, Javeria. So what is undertaken? What is being undertaken with Barnfield College and other FE producers to ensure that we have got the courses on in order to build up internally as much as possible the young people that are going to be taking up the construction work? And my final point is, it's something that's missing from this report. I would like to know more about staff development of our own staff within the council. Leadership courses at undergraduate level for the younger staff. Are we talking, for example, with Bedfordshire or Hertfordshire, are we talking about putting on courses of public policy to actually ensure that we are going to engage our own staff and bring the levels up? Because I don't see any sign of it. And maybe it's something that we should be putting into future performance indicators. I would like to see more of that. I'd like to know exactly what we're doing to our own staff, where the money's coming from, who we're approaching for the courses. Obviously with Sunil's department, maybe they've got people need to come through on planning. We've got the accountancy people. Are we upgrading our staff with degrees in accountancy, or at leadership level? Putting some of our staff onto executive MBAs, putting our staff onto, if we talk to Luton, if we talk to Hertfordshire, or perhaps university, in maybe the universities in other nearby universities, find out if they're able to put on the courses that we need, such as public policy or other similar courses that's going to engage our own staff and bring them up to the level that they would like to achieve. Sorry.
Thank you so much. There's some really useful feedback there, and I'd like to thank you for acknowledging how much work has gone in over the last year. So I've made some notes. So if I miss anything, then please absolutely talk to me about that. So the apprenticeship strategy, actually, we came to OSB and we started that conversation. I'm not sure if it was the end of last year, Javeria. And so there's a huge amount being done at the moment. So from September, we've employed an apprenticeship programme manager who's really driving that forwards within the council and externally. So, and that leads on to your last point, and I will come back to the others, I promise. So in terms of staff development, I think it would be really beneficial if you invited the HR's workforce development team, because they're doing a huge amount around the people strategy. And one of the things that we're doing at the moment, we've developed a leadership and management programme. So that is for operational managers and also for leaders. So this is at apprenticeship level 3 and apprenticeship level 5. And we're going to be having 2 cohorts of each one every single year. So the way that we had a check-in system, and now that's going to an annual review as well as a check-in system. So all staff will then have a personal development plan, and their progress and career progression will be covered as part of that, and what are the next steps. The Local Government Association have created a spreadsheet, for want of a better term, with all of the job roles in a local authority and mapped apprenticeships to them. So we can say that actually what the role that you're currently doing, this is what it's being mapped to, this is what the next step is in order to support that progression. We're also looking at job descriptions and writing that development of apprenticeships within that. We have got an apprenticeship levy, and that we need to utilise that fully as a local authority. So in the data team, now that we no longer have Civica and IT has come back in-house, actually we're now looking at data analysts. So we've got cohorts of data analysts that are just about to start in terms of upskilling members of those teams. So throughout the council, instead of it being just, oh, this individual over here would like to do an apprenticeship, so we will do that, we are now looking at that strategically. When I talked about working with our anchors, we're also looking at how we can get a Luton cohort. So even though an apprenticeship standard, and I know I'm preaching to the converted because you know all about this from your time at the university, but where you have got a standard, it doesn't mean that it can't be tailored to the local area. So to give you a really good example, careers advisors in schools, they can have National Careers Service training. But what would be really important is to have a Luton focused training, so that actually, how do you inspire young people? Well, you do that by bringing in the developers, you do that by bringing in Universal, so that they can say, these are all the things that we've got coming, and they're then going to go and share that out with not just our young people, but also with our 19 plus as well. So in terms of what is that strategy, absolutely. In terms of the Labour manifesto, apprenticeship targets are in there, and they are the targets increase. And this goes back to when Councillor Khan, you were our portfolio holder, and we are on track to increasing those numbers. So we do have a strategy and we are moving forwards. Of course.
Historically, at the university, they developed MBAs for Camelot, who ran the lottery before. They also developed for Vauxhall, both bachelor's and master's programs. It wouldn't be far removed to have the discussion, as well as having what you're doing on apprenticeship, to make sure that somebody's got a degree
order.
that has a degree.
Is this a conversation or?
That has a degree that they can carry with them, because their career isn't necessarily just going to stay at Luton. They will be able to, so I'm not quite sure what they get in the form of a qualification from the internal system, but it would be useful to make sure it's verified that leads to an actual qualification that they've got on their CV that carries both into promotion here, but into going on to elsewhere.
Absolutely, and it is now part of all standards, and we are matrix accredited within adult learning, and we absolutely have to do that to talk about their skills pathway, not just about the job they're in, but what that can go into. My only caveat about the MBA part is that, as you know, the government, as part of Skills England and the changes to the apprenticeship levy, said that they would be reducing the number of level 7 apprenticeships. So we do need to bear that in mind. However, we are still in those constant discussions with the university about what those specific needs are and can they address them. And that's how the AI project came about. So I know we've referenced that a few times, but it is just an example of how that collaborative working is now having an impact.
Can I just find out, do we have further comments were being asked? Councillor Isles.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I was just going to add, I don't know what happened with Junction 10. I know Councillor Frank sits on the Development Management Committee. He will have a much closer idea, and I hope he will feed that through to the development company, and I know I agree with Councillor Khan that we need to learn lessons. So I'm hoping Councillor Franks will take that on board on that committee. I think the report, thank you for the report. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And I know I don't agree with Councillor Stevens a lot of the time, but I do agree we've got some great participation data in there, which is great, but we do need outcomes. And where it is, it really makes it more powerful. And I'm going to make the point also that we do need to refresh the skills strategy, as Councillor Javeri has said, because it needs to fit in with our economic growth strategy, which is being developed at the moment, and they need to sit side by side. So, I mean, this strategy was passed in March 22. It's 3 years old. We need to refresh it and need to do that. On the point I think we were making about construction, I know the government has set very tough targets, about 1.5 million homes to be built. They recognise there is a shortage in the construction industry, and I know they've already launched 32 home building skills hubs up and down the country. I don't know where the nearest one is to us, but they're designed to generate about 5,000 apprenticeships in home building skills, construction skills in the trades. So you're looking at plastering, you're looking at bricklaying, you're looking at carpentry, you're looking at all the trades you need. And I know they've set some very ambitious targets to have 60,000 construction skilled people trained by 2029. So they do recognise the fact that there is a shortage and they need to have those people there if we're going to hit those target of 1.5 million homes over this parliament. And I just wanted to ask the officers, are we tapping into all of that, and are we looking to get some of that investment? There's I think probably over £500 million at least that I've seen at the moment to get some of that to come into Luton so we can build on that.
Thank you very much for your comments. Absolutely, that is something that we are working on with Barnfield College and their new build. We're also, in terms of the lessons learnt, we're also picking up on where developers have said that they will take on apprentices, and then that hasn't happened because actually we only needed them for 5 months. We're working with an organisation called Track. I think it's Track. Yeah. Who would become that employer and would then move them as part of their apprenticeship to the different programmes. So they could be working on the stage, then Power Court, going over to work on Universal, etc. So all of these things together absolutely support that. But I do agree with you, and I will work with my colleagues to look at the house building hubs. And then we can feed back to you on that.
I would support whether the portfolio holder and others lobbying government to say we want this in Luton because we have a huge housing issue and we need all this investment. So I think we may be pushing against an open door.
Councillor Ross.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to say thank you for the report. It's very detailed, and also the first bit that you put up about your achievements, what you've achieved so far, because that's really positive going forward. And also just to say that obviously having the DCO is going to be a huge impact in Luton and the surrounding areas, not just for us, but as I say, the surrounding areas. And I know that there'll be a lot more job opportunities around, and also that the job fairs as well. I've been liaising with Councillor Javera about job fairs, which is really important because obviously the children that you target or the young people you target, they're the ones for the future. And as my colleague said about the construction, working on the Crossroad project, that's what we did in London. They made sure in East London that the construction, they had a tunnel, we created a tunnel academy, okay, so that all the young people in the area were able to access that and be trained, and then they worked on the project. So that is something that we'd like to see done in Luton, because if they've done it in London, you can do it in Luton. And it was actually dedicated to East London. So it was, and they went into the schools, they engaged with the schools, and that has really worked. And I can be a testament of that because I've worked on the project for many years. So that's something that we can take forward as well as part of the job fairs as well. And that's not really difficult to create. And I can liaise with Councillor Javera how we did it in London. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to bring the meeting to a halt. But thank you very much indeed for the report, and thank you for your inputs as portfolio holder as well. Appreciate it. I'm sure we could have carried on for several more hours on some of these subjects. I think people are very passionate about it, but thank you very much indeed for your report. And my apologies again for the fact that the sequence didn't work out in your favour. Thank you very much.
Thanks, councillors.
Work programme.
Take questions.
Any questions on the work programme? If not, can you please put things in writing to Eunice, please?